Hi, everyone. So, on with part two of my coverage of my top 10 favorite historical films of the 1930s. And joining me, at least for right now, at least until she decides that she's bored and wants to get up and move, this is my girl kitty Demelza. Her brother Ross is also a member of our household. They are tuxedo cats, they are litter mates, and now you have an opportunity to admire the beauty of one of them. See how pretty her eyes are? So I'm just going to let her stay here until she just decides to leave. So now we are at number 6 on our countdown. And number 6 is 1938's World War I pilot drama, The Dawn Patrol. This movie concerns an RFC, Royal Flying Corps Company, that has a very high casualty rate. If you get sent up on a mission, the likelihood that you will not come back is extremely high. So we have Errol Flynn. Sorry about Errol Flynn again. You know, he was not a very nice person, but he did make quite a few good films, and this is one of them. But Errol Flynn and David Niven play a pair of friends who are the jokers of the company, who give the commander, Basil Rathbone, a hard time and blame him for the excessive casualties, blaming him for sending their friends up only to get killed. Well, about midway through the movie, Basil Rathbone gets a promotion. So he's moving up out of this commander's seat, and that means somebody from the company has to be promoted into it. And it turns out to be Errol Flynn. And eventually, his friendship with Niven is fractured because now he's the one who has to make those difficult decisions about who to send up. And one of the young men that he sends up happens to be Niven's younger brother, so they're no longer friends after that. And what Flynn decides to do about it will constitute a spoiler, so I'm not going to talk about that. But this is, for those of you who are interested in aviation, and particularly aviation in combat, along with 1927's Wings, this is a good depiction of what life in the Royal Flying Corps might have been like. So give this one a look-see, if you can find it. Next on the list is Rembrandt, starring Charles Laughton. Charles Laughton is known for giving these very bombastic performances. He's known for going over the top, and nobody can go over the top quite like Charles Laughton. He relishes those over the top performances. But what many people might not realize is that he was just as good at underplaying. He was just as good at the performances that required, if you'll pardon the pun, small brushstrokes, not bombast, nothing heavy handed, but more subtle performances, the quieter performances. And this, for my money, is one of Charles Laughton's best performances in that kind of role. So he plays the artist Rembrandt van Rijn in 17th century Holland. I want to make sure I get my dates right. But we see him go from losing his first wife through the end of his life when he's suffering from old age. So we go from his first great loss, then through his falling in love again with Hendrika, his maid, played by Elsa Lanchester. So Laughton and Lanchester were married in real life. It was what they call a lavender marriage because Charles Laughton was gay, but the two of them did get along well. They performed well. They liked one another, and they do have chemistry in this film. And of course, he ends up losing her too. So we find him in old age. The movie does not have a particularly happy ending. He is going to die of old age because nobody's immortal. But we see him in the last scene sitting at his favorite tavern where a group of healthy, happy young people have come in and they're making toasts to various things, to courage, to honor, to love. And then you have the old man sitting there muttering to himself, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." So it's a rather bittersweet ending. But I don't know about you, but I kind of like bittersweet endings on occasion, and that was the right ending for this particular movie. And it does give you a look at the artistic life of the Netherlands back then. And supporting performances are also strong, but Lawton really is the reason to see this film, and you should see this film. It is available on YouTube. I recommend looking it up and checking it out. At number 4 on my list is a movie that I've talked about already, and so I'm not really going to talk about it all that much. I talked about it in the very first one of my videos on 1930s movies. Before I decided to divide it by genre, I had originally wanted to go year by year. And in my video on 1930, I talked about All Quiet on the Western Front. And it is a historical drama. It's World War I, so it's the 1930s or 1930, looking back on World War I. Didn't seem like that long ago to the people who made the film back then. But it is really worth a look. I rewatched it recently to see, how much I remembered. And was it as good as I remembered? Did it hold up? It does hold up. And in fact, it held up so well that I decided to revisit the novel by Erich Maria Remarque. So give that one a look. The performance style, well, actually, not so much the performance style, but the dialogue, the filmmaking style is a little bit more primitive than a lot of the others on this list, but it is still very effective. And Lou Ayres gives a strong central performance. Louis Walheim also really shines as his mentor. And you get to know these young men, and you feel the tragedy when each of them is killed off, the victim of pernicious, power-hungry heads of state. Number 3 on my list is Goodbye, Mr. Chips from 1939. Some people might think this is an odd choice to highlight in a list about historical dramas, but it is set at the very end of the Victorian age. We get 1970. We get, I hope that's not the bit that ends up in the still of this video, but 1870. The years covered are 1870 through the 1930s, through, we might say, the mid-1930s. So we follow a schoolmaster at a boys' school from his novice days in 1870 and then on through the 1890s, when he doesn't really know exactly how to handle his students. He's not very popular. He doesn't feel like he's made all that much of a success. And then when he goes on holiday in the 1890s, he meets a beautiful young woman who shakes him up and brings him back to life. Some might call her the original, the prototype of what came to be called the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. I can see that particular criticism, but it really is well done. And Robert Donat is the schoolmaster, and Greer Garson in her Hollywood debut as the woman that he marries really are delightful together. So this is one to check out, but bring Kleenex, bring tissues, bring a handkerchief. Your eyes will get wet. So I am going to go ahead and stop this particular video and then save numbers 1 and 2 for my final part. So see you in a minute.